Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I've talked about this before, but for those who've been to Jerusalem and visited the Holocaust Museum there, Yad Vashem, when you walk up to the main doors, you'll see a teaching by the father of Hasidic Judaism in the 17th century, the Baal Shem Tov. And at the door, you see a really important quote that says, "Forgetfulness leads to exile, while remembrance is the secret of redemption." And I'm sure most of us understand why the creators of the museum wanted to have that quote right at the door for visitors to see. The past 3 weeks, I've tried to make my case regarding Jew hatred. And weeks before, this past month, I spoke about the injustice of Sarah Halimi, who was murdered in Paris for being Jewish. Joseph Newman, of blessed memory, he too was murdered for being Jewish. And I've heard from so many of you the past 3 weeks. First, a lot of people were taken back with the expression of Jew hatred versus anti-Semitism. Why am I saying Jew hatred instead of anti-Semitism? And my answer is, right now, academics are trying to suggest whether or not there should be a hyphen between anti-Semitism. And for me, I don't have time to talk about a hyphen, but rather get to the heart of the matter, that is simply Jew hatred. I wish that I could also talk about something else. I do wish that I could use this moment to enhance our spirituality, to reflect on the week, and to enjoy the Shabbos gift. But unfortunately, I can't. Last week, we honored Memorial Day, which for us Americans isn't so much a day of remembering those who've fallen, but of a long weekend. It's also June. Beginning the summer here in Birmingham, many of our kids are going to camp. A lot of our Temple family, they head to the lake. And I think it's easy to forget what's going on in the world. And that's why I began with a teaching from the Baal Shem Tov, forgetfulness leads to exile, while remembrance is the secret of redemption. This fight against Jew hatred is far from over, but sadly, it's only getting worse. I want to focus tonight on 3 things. The first is why I continue to speak out against Jew hatred and reflect on this pain as a community together. Second, I want to give this congregation an up-to-date as to where we are as a synagogue and as a Jewish community. And third, I want to continue to drive home why the celebration of Judaism, a baby naming, regardless of movements, the celebration of Israel, all these things creates a unified Jewish community, and that should be our goal. So first, why am I continuing to fight? It's really not about Cantor Whitner, it's not about me. It's about Brody, it's about Piper, it's about our children. It's about my daughter, his future son, my twins, and all of our children and grandchildren. I want them desperately to live in a country where Jew hatred is no longer acceptable and Jew hatred is no longer mainstreamed, where it's not up 500% in 14 days. Where our kids can try out for any sport and not get punished for being forced to eat pork. This just happened in Ohio. I want our kids to be able to go to college and take classes and explore their individual creativity and take a biology class without the professor pontificating against Israel, or a bevy of other students are simply hostile because they are Jewish. I want them to live in a time where there are legitimate consequences for those who espouse Jew hatred. Google's top executive in diversity and strategy wrote a blog that reemerged, which he said that Jews have an insatiable appetite for war and for killing. He still works at Google, though he's no longer in that position. This is why we must mobilize more than ever. I also recognize and empathize that Jew hatred is so much on our minds. We wake up, we hear another story, we get news notifications on our smartphones, and for so many of us, this is on our minds when we go to sleep. And this is a hard one. The silence from those whom we thought were our supporters, for whom we thought are allies. Their silence is still deafening. And therefore, we're forced to rethink our current allies and our partners. And for so many of us, this is more than a punch in our stomach. It's an eternal crisis for so many of us. And this is reality that we face as a nation. And nevertheless, the silence from our people is also too defeating. It's deafening. And once again, we ask ourselves how we in America, in 2021, we are forced to ask, how do we fit in this country with what's going on? And it's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And the father of modern Zionism, Theodor Herzl, said, it doesn't matter where the Jew lives, we will always face this crisis regardless of our success. And recently I came across an article by Alicia Wiesel, whose father was arguably the greatest intellectual in mind, a Holocaust survivor, who said the following in an article: "We, the Jewish people, spoken up for every cause but our own. It's time to shed our silence and speak with a loud voice." He is correct, and this is exactly what we're going to do. So I want to give this congregation as to where we are in this matter. The past 3 weeks, I've heard from many of you, and last week when I launched the Israel Action Committee, I received a bunch of emails wanting to join this committee, which is incredible. But here is where I'm deeply troubled. I have not heard yet from one member, one young family in our congregation. The buck stops with me. For those young families, I need you on this committee more than ever. And in a couple weeks, you'll hear from me when we'll have our first meeting. I asked our board to meet this month during their regular board meeting, where they will review our current mission statement, and I'm all but 100% confident that they will pass a motion adopting a language supporting our indigenous homeland, the state of Israel. My friend and partner, Danny Cohn, the CEO of the Jewish Federation, they are hosting an event here at Temple Emanu-El entitled Standing Up to Anti-Semitism, featuring Dov Volkner, the regional director of the American Jewish Committee. Danny and his team also invited civic leaders and members of the faith community, and this will be Wednesday night, June 16th at 6:30. Danny and I also met this past week to collaborate on future Israel programming for this community. And we both agree that any successful Israel programming must be a Jewish community initiative. We can't be in our silos. If we want to reach out to our younger members, this needs to be done at the community level. As I said to so many of you the past 21 days, this is the most defining moment for Jews in this country. When Holocaust survivors issued a statement last week saying that this period of time is reminding them of 1933 and 1945, This is the wake-up call that every Jew in this country needs to take seriously. And what I do now as your rabbi, this will be my legacy. It will all be the legacy for every single rabbi, every single Jewish professional, and for us too. If they fail to act and speak up against what's going on with our people, this will be a mark against them for years to come. I love being Jewish. I'm proud to be Jewish. I'm proud to be a Zionist. I'm proud to be part of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. And as Herzl once again believed, we cannot reason with any anti-Semite. We can only strengthen the Jew. Something that we need to do more than ever. And this is why I so disagree with Aaron Kayak, the current Jewish engagement director at the White House, who said that if you fear for life or physical safety, take off your kippah and hide your Star of David. That's not going to happen. We need to be proud and we need to have courage. In our parashah for this week, Parshat Shalach, after all, this speaks about how Joshua and Caleb had the courage to believe that they could reconquer Eretz Yisrael. And in honor of Piper's baby naming, her great-grandfather, Shimon Gradsky, a Holocaust survivor, believed in one important thing. We don't take the knee. I started off talking about Yad Vashem, but there's a reason why Yad Vashem has a path that connects it to Mount Herzl, which is the cemetery that houses those Jews who no longer represent being the sheep that were sent to the slaughterhouse. That's why Israel's designers wanted Yad Vashem here and Mount Herzl here, because Mount Herzl would tell another story for the Jewish people. That's why it houses people who have fallen in the police and the IDF, a new chapter for the Jewish people. If we want to change our current story, we're not supposed to be the sheep. We're supposed to be proud. We're supposed to be vocal. We need to be loud. We need to fight, and we need to fight for our cause now. It's only up to us. We can get lost in the abyss of the secular realm, be a victim to the 24-hour news cycle, and completely lose focus of what's going on to our people. We can't afford that. We don't take the knee. We lead, we teach, we guide. This is the path, and this is the path this congregation needs to go on moving forward. I pray for a day where I don't have to talk about this. But as long as this stuff continues to plague our community, I am obligated to speak out for Temple Emanu-El. I know it's painful, I know it's difficult, but the only way that we alleviate our suffering is to rise up together. Shabbat Shalom.